Oh, all right, guys, we're going to get started here. Everyone take your seats. Hello, everyone. My name is Jake Wyman, Communications Director for the Idaho Freedom Foundation, and welcome to tonight's Capital Clarity, how we can carry on Charlie Kirk's legacy. 5 months ago, our movement faced a defining moment of tragedy. Charlie Kirk was assassinated for the crime of speaking the truth. Perhaps even more tragic was a reaction from many on the left, who chose to use every insult they could to discredit his work and applaud his death. Their applause revealed the stakes of the battle we are in, proving that they don't just fear our ideas, they fear the man who gave them the voice. In that moment of tragedy, the nation watched to see how we would react, whether through despair or anger. But they clearly didn't know the people of Idaho. From here in Boise all the way up to Coeur d'Alene, thousands of Idahoans stepped up. We saw candlelight vigils being held in every corner of the state. We saw massive crowds of Americans gather, not in defeat, but in a shared, solemn vow that the mission Charlie started would not end with him. It wasn't just a memorial, it was a call to action. Charlie's mission was always about the future, about winning the hearts and minds of the next generation. And today, I am proud to say that the next generation isn't just coming, they are already here and they are leading the charge. We are honored to be joined by the young leaders who are living proof that this mission is being carried out. Tonight, we are joined by IFF's own Rachel Hazelip, BSU Turning Point Chapter President Austin Rose, and BSU Turning Point Government Relations Officer Cade Syvock. They will be sharing how Charlie's impact shaped their lives and how TPUSA is doubling down on the fight for our youth right here in Idaho. Charlie was assassinated to stop a movement. Instead, his legacy has become the foundation for a new era of leadership here in this state. With that, I would like to introduce our first speaker, someone whose calling was directly impacted by the work that Charlie did. Please welcome Idaho Freedom Foundation's very own Policy Director, Rachel Hazelip.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us on our second Capital Clarity. I'm Rachel Hazelip, Policy Director at the Idaho Freedom Foundation. I'll be fairly brief with my remarks. I'm excited to hear from our TPUSA guys, but I'm very grateful to be here with these amazing young people to reflect on Charlie Kirk, his life, his legacy, and his mission moving forward. Like millions of others around the globe, I've watched our culture wrestle with truth, often avoiding it, sometimes redefining it, and very frequently fearing it. We have seen how easily a generation can be shaped by what it is told to fear. Charlie chose instead to shape a generation around what it ought to defend: liberty, responsibility, and courage. In an age that often rewards apathy and punishes courage, Charlie chose a different path: to speak plainly, to organize relentlessly, and to insist that the next generation is not a problem to be managed, but a force to be unleashed. History testifies to the fact that powerful things happen when young people get involved in the public square, both good and bad. One of the most poignant examples of the power of young people taking a social and a political stand is the Chinese Cultural Revolution that took place between 1966 and 1976. Millions of young people, predominantly between the ages of 13 and 25, were organized as Red Guards under Mao Zedong. Their sole mission was to infuse communist and Maoist ideology into society by destroying the four olds: old ideas, old customs, old culture, and old habits. Anyone familiar with the Chinese Cultural Revolution knows that these Red Guards, again, 13 to 25-year-olds, fueled by radical ideology, progressive Marxist education and propaganda, and fanatic loyalty to Mao Zedong, perpetrated widespread and devastating violence and carried out public humiliations, torture, the destruction of cultural heritage, and the persecution of teachers, artists, and intellectuals. Though framed as being part of a movement to promote equality and eradicate corruption, the Red Guards became instruments of evil. They were taught that anyone, including family members, who held differing beliefs to their new revolutionary ones, or people who held traditional ideas were dangerous. Places of worship, historical artifacts, and cultural heritage were all destroyed in an effort to create a new China. Sounds pretty familiar, doesn't it? Mao credited the Red Guard with being perhaps the most critical component that built the new communist China. In the 1960s and 70s, it was the young people that fundamentally changed the political, social, cultural, and educational landscape in now one of the most powerful nations in the world, because they were mobilized to do so. Joseph Stalin in the Soviet Union said, "Give me just one generation of youth and I will transform the world." Young people changed Maoist China, they fortified Stalinism in the Soviet Union, and shaped Nazi Germany. But young people are also the group that walked with Jesus and were called his disciples. Historians agree that most of the men who died defending the Alamo were under the age of 35. And young people helped build the freest, most prosperous, and benevolent nation in human history, the United States of America. And it was for this purpose that Charlie formed Turning Point USA, because too many young Americans were being radicalized and mobilized for evil rather than righteousness. Too many were being told what to think and not how to think, and what to fear and not what to defend. What made Charlie's leadership profound was not that he claimed to have all the answers, but that he asked the right questions. What does it mean to be free? What is the proper role of government? And just as importantly, what are its limits? And what responsibilities inherently come with liberty? These questions and the answers to them shape the future. James Madison wrote that the advancement and the diffusion of knowledge is the only guardian of true liberty. Charlie understood that education is not merely academic, it's moral. What we teach shapes what we tolerate, and what we tolerate eventually defines us. That is the heart of the movement that Charlie began. Education is essential to liberty, and at Turning Point USA and the movement Charlie built exists because too many institutions abandon that responsibility. John Adams warned that liberty once lost is lost forever. The founding fathers understood, as Charlie did, that freedom is fragile and that self-government requires a moral and informed people. Adams also said, our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. And that brings us to the mandate before us that Charlie's life exemplified. Our mandate is not merely to win elections, but to form citizens. Not merely to oppose bad ideas, but to cultivate new ones. Not merely to speak loudly, but to live faithfully. We are all called to be stewards of liberty, of culture, and of the inheritance we did not create, but are obligated to protect. This mandate belongs especially to the next generation. You are all here not by accident. You are standing at an intersection of history and responsibility. Esther 4:14 says that perhaps you have come to this moment for such a time as this. We live in trying times, and the question set before us is not whether the moment is difficult, it is whether we will rise to meet it. Charlie understood that to preserve liberty, young people must rise as citizens, not spectators, as builders, not bystanders, and as leaders who understand that freedom requires stewardship and courage. From a biblical perspective, courage is obedience in the face of fear. Charlie's life reflected that kind of courage, the willingness to act, even when it cost your life, your fortune, and your sacred honor. And I'll finish with this. When I attended Charlie's memorial, what struck me the most was not the powerful people who were there talking, or just the scale of the event. There were thousands of people from literally all around the world who came to honor his life. What struck me was the commissioning that occurred. As I stood there during worship, I was reminded of Isaiah 6:8. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" And I said, "Here I am, Lord, send me." That verse captures the heart of leadership, not ambition, just willingness. Charlie understood that leadership is multiplication, not individual elevation. Charlie's life reminds us that leadership is not about position, it's about obedience to truth. It's about showing up when it would be easier to sit down, about speaking up when it's safer to stay silent, and about believing deeply and unapologetically that truth is never negotiable. To the next generation, this is our calling, not someday, but right now. Courage is not reserved for extraordinary moments. It is formed in ordinary faithfulness. So let's continue to honor him well, with resolve, and by answering the call placed before us, with courage, with clarity, and with conviction. Thank you very much. And I'm proud to introduce our next speaker, Austin Rose, who is the BSU Turning Point Chapter President. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you all for being here tonight, and thank you to the Idaho Freedom Foundation for hosting us at this event. We've had the opportunity to work with them a lot over the past few months, and they've always been great to work with, so we really appreciate you guys. Tonight, I wanted to talk to you guys about the legacy of Charlie Kirk. I remember when I was 14, locked in my house because of COVID, watching video after video of Charlie Kirk debating people about his ideas. Eventually, I moved to Eagle, Idaho, and I got involved with our high school Turning Point chapter, and my involvement just exploded after that. I got the privilege to meet Charlie several times, and our chapter was able to host him last spring in the biggest club event ever in Boise State's history, with about 3,000 attendees being there. Thousands of students showed up in a field in the middle of a Tuesday to see a man talk about his ideas. What about Charlie made him so special? Why would young people care so much to see one man debate? It was because Charlie connected with them on a level that no other political figure was able to do. He appealed to the issues that young people truly care about. Young Americans of my generation have grown up being told that our country is racist and misogynistic, and that our ancestors who built this nation from the ground up were evil men who we shouldn't admire. They've been told that if they're not actively disavowing their forefathers and their nation, that they are just as bad and they are part of the problem as well. And the place where this rhetoric was being pushed more than anywhere else was our American universities. Charlie went to the source of the problem and offered a different path for these students. He told them that you're allowed to be proud of your ancestors, you're allowed to love your country, and you don't need to believe the lies of the left. His movement, Turning Point USA, promotes a positive vision for America, one that's fun, exciting, high energy, and most importantly, one that tells the truth. That is why on September 10th of last year, when Charlie was assassinated, the impact of his death was felt across campus. Eyewitness students devastated and angry with what had happened. But most importantly, I saw people wanting to get involved, and I was flooded with hundreds of texts, emails, and DMs from people asking how they can help out the movement and ultimately how they can assist in carrying out Charlie's legacy. So how can young people and other members of the community help out the movement? It starts with getting involved at the most basic level. If you're in high school or college, join your school's Turning Point chapter. If they don't have one, you can start one. Get to know your state senators and representatives and advocate to them on the issues that you and other young people care about. Carrying on Charlie's legacy doesn't mean copying his words or trying to replicate him. It means adopting the same courage to speak when it's uncomfortable, to engage rather than retreat, and to stand firm without backing down. Movements don't survive because of just one person. They survive because ordinary people decide that the truth is worth defending in their own lives. Our chapter's executive team just came back from Turning Point's America Fest in Phoenix last month, where we were able to see the excitement in the eyes of thousands of young men and women traveling from all around the nation to come support the organization that Charlie had built. Talking with people there, it is clear that the movement is still alive. The people that Charlie impacted are more determined than ever to see his mission through. However, it is also important to understand that not everyone feels the same way about Charlie that we do. After his assassination, the left took to social media to mock his murder and to celebrate the death of an innocent father and husband. Charlie wasn't a politician or lawmaker. He was simply a man passionate enough to speak up about his beliefs. When they celebrate the death of Charlie Kirk, they show us what many on the left would think if any ordinary conservative like you or me were to be killed. Not only would they not shed a tear, they would actively advocate for it to happen again and again. There is no unity with people who share this mindset. They don't want to unify, they want to destroy. We are in a multi-generational fight for the future of our great nation. No matter how hard it gets or how many obstacles are thrown in our way, we must push forward. This isn't a fight that we can win overnight. It takes time. One of my favorite quotes is, "A society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they will never sit in." This is something that I think about often as I engage in political activism. Frankly, I don't think that our movement will ultimately win out in our lifetimes, but we need to continue to lay the foundation and make incremental progress so that our children and our children's children can pick up where we left off and ultimately make America great again. Thank you, guys, and I would now like to introduce our chapter's Government Relations Officer, Cade Syvock.
All righty. Good evening, everyone. First, want to introduce myself. My name is Cade Syvock. I'm currently a political science major at Boise State University. I am a soldier in the Idaho Army National Guard. I'm the son of two parents in law enforcement. I am a patriot, and I am the Government Relations Officer for the Boise State chapter of Turning Point USA. My role is to ensure that legislators and those who hold power within the state of Idaho understand the problems that young people face within the state of Idaho and advocate to ensure that our voices are heard. First, I want to ask, do we have any legislators in the House tonight? I want to thank you so much. In my speech, I had said legislators, but it looks like we just have one. So for the legislator in attendance tonight, I want to thank you for showing up for not just Charlie, but for the state of Idaho, young people in the Treasure Valley, and future generations to come. For the legislators not in attendance tonight, I would ask that each and every single one of you sitting here today look around. Look and see if your legislator is in attendance. And if they are not, I would like to ask you to reach out to them. In the aftermath of Charlie's assassination, we saw immense amount of love and support and solidarity for Charlie. Charlie touched the lives of all of us in such a special way. And the fact that even with him gone, our community has stood strong shows that Charlie's work can still continue. However, with support comes deception. I'm sure that each of our legislators have talked about how much they love Charlie and supported everything he stood for. But if they can't take time out of their day and come to support Charlie's cause, they may not be living up to the ideas they preach. We face many issues within the state of Idaho. However, we are able to solve those issues in a way that follows traditional beliefs and the ideas that our founders set out for us, with very little pushback from leftists seeking to destroy this nation. We must ensure that our cause is not poisoned by wolves in sheep's clothing. And that is why it is very important that we hold our legislators accountable. Complacency builds comfort. Comfort breeds trouble. And trouble will lead this great state to being destroyed before we even have a chance to fix it. Do not become complacent. Just because you believe that we have the right people in power does not mean that we always do. Power can turn good people bad. It can turn saints into devils. And I can promise you that someone corrupted by power won't let you know the next time you go into the ballot box. Personally, I grew up in the state of California. I hate to admit it, but I must. Both my parents were in law enforcement. My mother is actually in attendance here. She could stand up. She spent 32 years as a 911 dispatcher at Newport Beach Police. Father spent 30 years as a child exploitation detective with Newport Beach as well. They got to grow up in the state of California when it was still an amazing state. Ronald Reagan in the 80s was great. They watched their state get destroyed by the left. And frankly, we could see that here in the state of Idaho. And the one thing that didn't happen was legislators at a state level were not held accountable. Don't let that same mistake that happened in the great state of California, or once was the great state of California, here in the great state of Idaho. I never really had the chance to meet Charlie in person like Austin or Rachel did. But the first time I got to see Charlie in person was when we had our campus event, which, like Austin pointed out, was the largest event in Boise State history. It was an event that I was skeptical about attending, simply because I grew up in a place where opinions like his were not ones that you could express. You would get beat up, harassed, and called some of the most vile things, even if you did not say those things yourself. But for the first time in my life, I felt that I could have opinions like Charlie, and I didn't have to be afraid. Charlie showed me that day that I live in a place where we can love our country and not be called evil, where we can be conservative and not be labeled as Nazis, where we can talk and not be cut off or silenced. Charlie showed me that day that America was not too far gone, and with perseverance and a willingness to put myself out there, I could help fix and create a better future for not only myself, but generations to come. Besides that amazing day on campus, I had followed Charlie online. During COVID, while the nation was locked down, I spent most of my days working for a local farmer, learning how to work hard, restoring my 1973 Ford F-250, learning how to problem solve, and tuning into his podcast and many just like him, each and every day. I learned more in that time than I ever did before. He turned one of the darkest times in my life and my generation's lives into a time of learning, reflection, and progress. Even after the horrific events of September 10th, Charlie has continued to turn dark times into brighter ones. On the day of his assassination, it started off like any other one for me. I went to class, I grabbed some food, and I went about my day like any other. I found out about the shooting while talking with a local friend of mine, listening in on a conversation as a group of two young men passed by. At first, I didn't believe it. I had thought that it was just some BS on TikTok that our young generation unfortunately has to watch all the time, and that they were just lying. It didn't happen. But I immediately left that conversation, went back to my dorm room, turned on the TV, and saw the headline, "Charlie Kirk shot at UVU." I hope Charlie was okay and that he was just grazed. But after opening up my phone and having to witness the video of him up close being assassinated, I knew that he was gone. I never had a relationship with religion, but for the first time that day, I prayed. I prayed for a miracle, that this whole situation would end and Charlie would stay alive and recover, the shooter would be taken out, and that this would be used as a building block to advocate against political violence. But it didn't. I called members of our chapter that day, most either crying or struggling to speak, and I asked how they were holding up. Most could barely get an answer out, but I knew that we were all devastated, terrified, and lost. A man that we looked up to, a man that we saw ourselves in, taken away by a single bullet, simply for talking to people like us. Charlie may have been taken away from us, but his life didn't end that day. JFK, young president, I believe he was 43, was quoted saying, "A man may die, nations may rise and fall, but an idea lives on." Charlie's legacy has been and must continue to be the backbone of our mission, not just in the world of politics, but in our everyday lives. We must live up to the standards that Charlie has set. We must not let his efforts die in vain. If you take anything away from tonight, I ask that you take this away. Do not live your life like there's another one to come after. Do not work only for yourself. Do not waste precious time that God has given us. Charlie never wasted a second of his short time, and look at the impact he made. Charlie made sure that people like me had a nation to hold on to, even if that meant he didn't get to see that nation play out. Charlie lived each and every day like he was fighting against the clock. Charlie lived as an American should, as a patriot should, and as a godly man should. I want to thank you all for attending this event. Charlie dedicated his life to this nation and to my generation. The Lord knew exactly what he was planning when he called Charlie home. Now, Charlie is with the Lord, and he has made it our mission to carry on the torch that Charlie had left us. Continue to work, continue to live, continue to thrive. Stay in touch with our legislators. Fight for what is right, and do God's work each and every day. Not just because it is the right thing to do, but also because it is what Charlie would have continued to do. God bless you all and have an amazing night.
Can we get another round of applause for all three of our speakers there? Thank you very much. So we are actually going to open it up to Q&A now. So if all three speakers would like to come up and use this mic for answers, but please line up at the mic here if you have questions, and we'll take Q&A.
As someone who's also a part of this generation that has oftentimes felt fear about speaking up or attending events like this out of retribution and things similar to what happened to Charlie, what do you guys recommend for ways to get involved and show support?
One of the greatest things that we have in this current generation is social media. Charlie recognized that. We all recognize that. It's an amazing way to stay connected within politics, stay connected within our legislators, within the state. I recently spoke at the Canyon County Republican Committee meeting, and there was one thing that really troubled me, and it was the fact that I show up to this meeting, and there was about a 40-year age gap between me and the next member. And I spoke about Charlie, and I spoke about his mission and what Turning Point's mission has been. And the very first question I got was about how we get young people involved. And I told him, I said, social media. And I had quite a few people within that audience almost look at me like I was speaking a foreign language, because we have an issue within our party where we have legislators that don't even understand what social media is, how to use it, and it disconnects our legislators, our politicians from our people. So my advice would be stay active on social media. If you can make it in person, if you feel comfortable being in person, great as well. But social media is going to be the future for politics.
Thank you.
There's 3 million podcasters out there. Does Charlie have a grave yet? Because there's a lot of black magic around what happened. And, he was going against Zionism. Are you guys Zionists?
That's all you, Austin.
Yeah, in terms of like the, kind of conspiracy theory stuff around Charlie's death, I think it's kind of, a big thing in our generation to want answers right now, especially since there's, such large access to information. My kind of opinion on it is we kind of need to let it take time, see how the trial goes, and then kind of start doing stuff after that. But I think, as of right now, we need to kind of just sit back and see how things play out. In terms of the Zionism question, personally, I kind of take the opinion of Zionism not being really like theologically correct, but that's just my opinion. But I generally support Israel over Palestine. So
Thank you for your service for the conservative cause. I'm a Ron Paul conservative, and Charlie was doing really good, but his death, I was an ER doctor. What came out of his neck was brown pudding, not bright red liquid blood that at least the pictures we got, that made his shirt, should have turned his shirt totally red right away. And I didn't see that. The whole thing was a mystery, carrying his body like that to a van and going to a different hospital. It's been so analyzed by millions of people. No, the feds are lying through their teeth.
Yeah, if I could just respond to that. We see different clips on social media we see different angles. We see a bunch of different stuff, and a bunch of different people are telling us what we should and shouldn't see. Personally, we had friends that were at the event. I can tell you right now that, I mean, there's no doubt about it. So I would steer away from going on social media, listening to people that weren't there, didn't experience it, or just trying to analyze it. One example that always gets brought up is Candace, and we at the Turning Point chapter on Boise State feel horrible for Candace. We think that she is going through some problems and that she is having issues, and we sympathize with her. However, if you want to know the truth, talk to the people that were there. You can call up the University of Utah chapter and speak with people that were there. You can speak with the president. So I wouldn't.
They were taking films, and no blood came out of his neck. It was brown pudding.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you for being here. I know all of you, and I'm so excited. I'm going to do a little promo, and then I'm going to ask you a question because we are doing an event February 28th. It's called the Syringa Speaker Series, and actually, we were going to announce our event right around the time that Charlie was assassinated, but we held off. But we already had a title, and it's called Protecting the Next Generation, which was just, I mean, it was so amazing that we had picked that subject. So we have Liz Wheeler, Chloe Cole, and Joe Concha. And you guys are going to be honored that night, the Turning Point BSU campus chapter. And also we're going to be giving an award, the Leadership Award, to Charlie Kirk posthumously, and we'll have a beautiful video. So I'm inviting everyone to come. It's February 28th, Syringa Series, speakerseries.org. And right now we have over 100 young people. You were talking about not being able to get young people involved. We have generous sponsors that are buying tables for young people. So my goal is to have 150 young people there sponsored and intermingle with all of the old people so that we can have a big AmFest party right here in Boise, Idaho. But I do have a question for you, because at the end of the night, we're going to do Q&A with Chloe Cole and Liz Wheeler. And I would like to know what would be the question that you would ask Liz or Chloe. And I would like to hear from both of you, please.
Yeah, of course. And yes, I was supposed to shout that event out, so my bad. But yeah, that's going to be a great event happening with the Syringa Speaker Series. As for a question I would ask, I think I would probably ask Chloe Cole, like at what point did she start to realize that the transgender stuff was, completely insane, and start to realize what the truth was? Probably what I would ask her. Thought.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we have a big issue within our generation where we fed into mental illness, and instead of properly treating it, we just accept it and then push people further into mental illness. And I'm sure she dealt with that when she was transitioning. So I'd like to kind of ask her the same question. What do you think, where do you think your maybe parents, people that you trusted, people within your community, where do you think they turned you in the wrong direction that led you down this deep hole? And what did you do to get yourself out of it and advocate for yourself? So
That's a great answer, because I think we need to have the children parent the parents at this point. We have a lot of young people that are much more mature and reasonable than their own parents. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I'll see you on the 28th of February at the Boise Center. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you all speakers, Rachel, Cade, and Austin. There's just one thing I would like to add, that if someone were to ask me right now, what's wrong with this generation, there are two things that would come to my mind. Number one would be ignorance of the young generations, what's going on. And then number two would be the young generation falling in love with the wrong things. They're falling in love with everything that's surrounding us except two things, God and freedom. And whatever you fall in love with, that what will be you will be sacrificing for. And so the freedom is so precious to be just buried in books. We should hold it up so high in front of us to remind ourselves that we're still here, free to think and free to speak. But that our ancestors couldn't do, we can do it, and our children should be able to do so as well. That liberty actually deserves such a great deal of thoughts that there is no substitute for it unless it's be preserved. There is little else worthwhile. Protections of rights is righteousness. So if I were to be asked what am I going to do, well, I don't know about everyone else in this room or whoever is watching online, but as for me and my house, we will worship the Lord and fight for freedom. Thank you.
I just want to add to that. When it comes to the Lord and when it comes to religion, I think we're definitely starting to see a shift. We're seeing the most conservative generation come up, which has never happened in past generations. Typically, they're more liberal than the past generation. And I think, when you have people like Charlie, people that advocate for young people, people that advocate for traditional values, for the great American dream, I think typically that just guides people into God's path. So I think that the greatest thing that we've seen is people follow God's path, live for God, live by God. And I think that we'll continue to see that if we just continue to work and make sure that they are able to live the American dream and they're able to thrive in their own lives as well. So.
Any more questions? Okay. With that, thank you so much. Oh, you have one?
So a question for you both. When it comes to the generations and what you guys are facing as, like, say, in Gen Z, what would connect you, or how do you feel disconnected? I'm a Gen Xer, my wife is, and so our kids are all your same generation. And I kind of look at when I spent my time in the fire service, we saw big gaps and differences in generations. And I look back and I didn't remember there being those huge gaps like it seems there is today between, say, like grandparents, parents, and then my generation. So what would be the best way for you guys to feel connected and relate to older generations? Because I think there's a lot of wisdom what's passed down through generations, but do you guys see a gap there? And what do you feel would better connect you to generations before you, so we can do this all together as Americans?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. I think personally, one big thing about the kind of generational gap that we're seeing right in our generation is just how much the country has changed from when older generations were growing up towards when we were growing up. Social media is a big part of that. I think that some older generations might not understand the significance that social media plays in our society. I think immigration as well is a big one. Like the communities that older generations got to grow up in, I think are a little bit different than the communities that we grew up in. And I think there's a little bit of a disconnect there. So I think you're 100% right. There's a lot of wisdom that gets passed down. But I do think that a lot of older generations kind of like dismiss the opinions of younger people a lot of the time, just because it's like, oh, like they're young, they don't know necessarily what they're talking about. And I think that's 100% true for a lot of cases. But I do think there is something to the experience of younger people that older generations might not connect with as well. Any thoughts?
Yeah, and then kind of with that, I think we definitely see the deterioration of what a family is. Personally, at my home, it's me, my sister, my parents, and then my grandparents. We don't see that anymore. We don't see families living together. We don't see families connecting. We don't see families having family dinners. So I think that in itself automatically creates a divide when if you can't even sit down at the dinner table every night with your own family, with people of different generations, how are you going to do that with complete strangers? So I think we really need to bring back what it means to be a family. And I think we would see that gap close. And then kind of with Austin's point, young people today face a major issue. I spoke about it at the committee meeting on Tuesday. From 1960 to now, housing prices, I believe they've increased around 130%. Wages are 29%. And then you have young people that are just being told, well, you just need to work harder. I can tell you right now, my sister right here, she's working as a nurse at St. Luke's, working 60 hours a week and can't even afford to put a down payment on a home, let alone own a home, and then being told, well, you could have a 50-year mortgage and pay this off for 50 years instead of 30 years. I think that in itself discourages young people from wanting to talk to older people. Along with that, brought up the legislators. We have a lot of legislators that are much older than me and Austin. We had one show up today. So if our legislators or if our elected officials who are part of a different generation can't even show up for not us, but Charlie at an event like this, it creates a gap. So I believe that there's blame on both sides, both young and old, but I think the core of it is going to be family. And I think we need to reinstate what it means to be a family.
Thank you.
Can I just just interject real quick
Yeah.
on that too? I think too, this age gap that we kind of see is very much fostered by Marxist ideology, right? Every big major Marxist regime that we've ever seen, going back to the Soviet Union, Communist China, Rwanda, Burma, I mean, you name it, all of them, they made a very distinct separation between the older generation and the younger generation. And they actively worked to isolate young people from their parents. And I think we're seeing that in mass culturally in the United States, and we've seen it for a long time. Excuse me. So I think that's a very key thing as well. And I think kind of to invert that a little bit, I think a lot of it is on the older generation that we need to be instilling traditional family values into our kids. And I think some of that was maybe missed in our previous generation. And so that helps foster that divide. But I do think that there is that component as well, that there is a concerted effort to separate the young and the old. Kind of as mentioned before with Mao Zedong, like that's exactly what they did, right? And they eradicated the four olds. And I think we've seen that over the last decade or two in the United States. So just adding that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Both of you mentioned the legislators a couple of times. Are there any particular legislative topics that have you most energized? And then your Turning Point chapter being so close to the Capitol here, it's probably unique among universities. Is there something as a group your chapter wants to focus on legislatively?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. I know that there's works to get the Charlie Kirk Memorial Highway bill passed through. We're super excited to see that happen. Another big thing, because we're obviously Boise State students and we're pretty involved with what's going on campus, is the presidential search for Boise State. I don't know if anyone's been paying any attention to what's going on there. Long story short, there's certain laws in Idaho that make it so that the once there's 5 finalists released, those finalists for the president of Boise State need to be released publicly so that everyone can see their names. That kind of discourages people from applying to have the job in the first place, because if you have a job at another institution, you don't necessarily want everyone knowing you're looking for a new job. So it's kind of a thing I'm hearing about on both sides. They want to change that so we can find a president pretty quickly. It's been almost coming up on a year now that we haven't had a permanent president of Boise State, and I know they're trying to get that rolling as soon as possible. So that's a bill I believe it was introduced on Tuesday, I want to say. So hopefully that gets through, and that's one thing that we're going to be working on as well. So do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, and with that, we're definitely focusing on the budget. It's definitely going to take people away from the conservative movement and from the Republican Party. If we provide them a state that spends more that we have, while also not allowing them to live within their own state, we see record high housing prices. It pains me to live in my own community and see houses being built for $1.5, $1.6, $2 million that I will never be able to live in. However, someone from the state of California who made all of their dough can come in, not live up to Idaho culture, Idaho values, buy that house and destroy our state. So we definitely want to focus on the budget. Bringing in those houses and bringing in those people is not going to benefit young people. And especially when we run ourselves into a deficit after being told that we have all of this money, it's not going to make young people happy. So we want to make sure that the state legislator understands that we need to be fiscally responsible, and that if we aren't, it's going to come out and bite us in the butt in future generations. So,
Thank you. Good answers.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you very much. Have you guys, since the assassination on campus, I used to work for Boise State, as a matter of fact, from 2003 to 2011. I've seen the shift and huge change there. Moved back in 2016 to be here with family. We talk about family. Anyway, my point is, have you guys seen a shift in what's going on campus since the assassination? I mean, are you finding yourself to be still outsiders or people starting to respect more?
I think pretty generally what I've seen on campus in terms of like the students is it's pretty split. I'd say down the middle, which is a positive thing compared to most American universities. But I think most of the conservatives are like in principle they're conservatives. Like they'll vote for Donald Trump, but I think they're a little bit less likely to get involved in political activism. And I think that definitely shifted after Charlie. People started to want to get more involved and see how they could participate. But it's still not to the extent in which liberals, I think, are willing to put themselves out there and get involved and join organizations and just influence the political culture in the area. But I think generally there has been a shift to the right on campus, and I think that conservatives are probably in the majority, even if it's slim. So,
one thing I always like to point out. So after the assassination of Charlie, we were putting up flags for 9/11. We already had that planned. However, the morning that we went out to go put out flags by the flag in the quad, someone had already created a sign for Charlie, and there was already flowers out there. We had nothing to do with it. We had no idea it even happened. So I think we're definitely seeing conservatives on campus be more comfortable. The fact that someone was able to go out and do that without Turning Point just goes to show how much they love Charlie. But I think we're definitely seeing a major shift on college campuses, and specifically BSU. I think that we have one of the most conservative group of students on campus. The biggest trouble has been trying to get people out there and making their voices heard. But overall, I think we've done a really good job with the students that we have. And I truly believe that the students coming out of the university are going to be productive members of society. Obviously, we have a few leftists that like to shout and yell, but the loudest person isn't always the right one. So I think we have a really good group of students coming out of Boise State.
Good. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
thank you.
I came late, so I apologize if my question is maybe already been talked about. But I would like to hear your guys' input regarding the budget and how this overall education budget, and there's deficits here, but there's money over here, and how that's affecting the college. And we know that affects loans, kids being able to go to college, while at the same time we talk about affordability, and maybe the government shouldn't be paying for everything that we're doing, and yet it seems like the government is really trying to pay for everything we're doing so they can tell us what to do. But I'd like to hear your guys' input regarding that budget.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. It's not our state government's job to pay for every lifestyle of our citizens within the state. And on that note, I mean, with college, obviously we are trying to make sure that students get funding. However, our main focus, if students are going to get funding to go to college and pursue a degree and get a career, we want to make sure that that funding goes to students who are going to be productive members of society. We want that funding to go to students that are going to use it to benefit the future generations to come. I like to bring up my sister again. She went through the nursing school at Boise State University, came out debt-free, went through on her own dime and on scholarships. She earned every part of it. She graduated magna cum laude and got a job right out of college. If we are going to see funding from the state legislature go to students, we want to see it go to students like that. Overall, the budget, the main thing that young people are mad about, and rightfully so, is that we were promised that we were going to have millions and millions and millions of dollars in taxes from all of the influx of rich Californians from out of state. And now we're left in the hole and then being told, well, we're going to have to cut, if you did earn a scholarship, we're cutting it. So I would like to see programs that don't help out people that deserve it be cut, and programs that do help out people continue to receive funding while we balance the budget.
Is there a way to identify that?
I think a great thing that we're seeing is guys like Nick Shirley going around finding fraud. We're definitely trying to look for fraud within the state of Idaho. Luckily, I don't think that we have as much as a Democratic state like Minnesota.
Sure.
But I think another thing is making sure that young people are going out there, making their voices heard at these committee meetings so that legislators understand what young people really care about when it comes to funding for the state. Do young people really care about social welfare programs where people are on them for 20, 25 years, 30 years? Or do they care more about securing, first-time home loans so that their family can live within the Treasure Valley and work within the Treasure Valley and contribute to the state of Idaho? So,
Well, I have to say that TPUSA's thought process encouraging families and all of that is certainly going to help the mindset that says we need to be responsible citizens at the same time.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think if you have a responsible and a good family, it reflects greatly upon the decisions you make, in society. So I think the base root, and especially Charlie pushed us all the time, family was huge for him. And we saw his family, just an absolutely amazing family. For at least guys like us and for young men in society, your family reflects who you are. And Charlie did a great job building up his family and maintaining his family, and it reflected greatly upon him. And I know me and Austin both hope to continue exactly like Charlie did.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you guys. Thank you for what you do. It makes me feel better about the future to see you guys so well put together and with your ideas so well organized. One of the things I really liked about Charlie was how he would engage in conversations with people that had different viewpoints, and he would listen to what they had to say. I was at a abortion rights march last week doing the same thing. I was out sharing the gospel with people that were there, and they definitely had different opinions than I have. I believe in abolishing abortion. I think it should be abolished. I think every human being deserves equal protection under the law from the moment of conception. But one thing I did in my course of conversations, I discovered that there's some out-of-state influence that are bringing some bills to Idaho that would try to change a lot of the laws that are on the books. And I was wondering if you guys had your eyes on any of that, and if you had any plans to kind of combat that outside influence.
Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Are you referring specifically to the ballot initiative?
Yes.
For the abortion?
I'm sorry, I don't have a lot of specifics because, like I said, I just learned about it when I was out talking.
Yeah, no, I was actually there too. It was pretty wild. It's amazing. Civil discourse was really, what Charlie built his entire career around. The second we stopped talking, right, bad things happen. He used to always say that. And obviously it culminated in his assassination. For the Idaho Freedom Action, and maybe Jake would want to speak more to this, but Idaho Freedom Action is a sister organization to the Idaho Freedom Foundation, and they will be working against the ballot initiative that will be coming up. It sounds like I chatted with a couple people from Planned Parenthood this last weekend, and it sounds like they have enough signatures to put it on the ballot. So it does look like it's going to be going before the people of Idaho, which is very unfortunate. It's very surprising to me that they were able to get that many signatures, but it does sound like it will be on our ballot in November, according to what they said. So I would definitely be looking out for stuff from the Idaho Freedom Action. And then other groups, I assume that the Idaho Republican Party will also be taking a hard stance against that. It's in the Republican Party platform that we stand for life from conception to natural death. So also a good person to reach out to, or a good group to reach out to, would be the Republican Party.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. With that, thank you so much, everyone. Please give it up again for all three of our speakers here today.
Thank you. That concludes today's Capital Clarity. Please tell everyone else we have Capital Clarity every Thursday here from 6 to 7 p.m. Tomorrow we will be unveiling a big name that's going to come speak next Thursday. So please, follow our social media, get on our email list. We'll update you as soon as we can. Thank you so much.